off, good morning. Welcome to the Legally Fit 101 event. So super excited to be hosting this event again. This is the first time we've actually done this event in the past 3 years. We've been just using a recording of the previous one. And we're super excited to kick off a slew of services and attention for our law school, peeps out here. So it's like law school is getting more and more difficult with the current demands of being a half online student in person, and then just the challenges that come with, balancing so much in life and law. And so, we're here to give you all of the tips and tools that you can use to be successful. And whether that's a 1L, 2L, 3L, right, for all years of law. So I want to start off today's session with a formal introduction of myself, so you can get to know me a little bit better and the man behind Legally Fit. So my name is DeAndre Aubrey. I am the founder and CEO of Legally Fit. I went to law school. I got to think about it again. I started in 2011. All right. And I went to Howard University. I was graduating in my senior year of Howard University, and I took a business law course. And this was a class that at Howard University had a 70% fail rate. Like, this one class was one of the single reasons why so many people did not graduate on time. And so all that to say, I was just scared into making sure I did not fail. And that fear motivated me and pushed me all the way to flying through the class with all A's. I tested out of the final exam, and it was great, right? And so from that, the dean of the business school was like, "You gotta go to law school." My mom was like, "You gotta go to law school." Well, really, she's been saying that my whole life, but this was now even more fuel to the fire. And so I kind of reluctantly, honestly, applied to law school. It was kind of one of those things all right, I'll throw in the applications just to make everybody else around me happy. And at the time of applying to law school, I also applied to work at Apple, which was my dream at the time, just that young budding company that looked seemingly to take over the world. And I actually just got hired, and it was in orientation for Apple when I got a call from Southwestern Law School, and I was admitted. And I was just like, whoa, I had forgot all about applying to law school, really. And I sat down. I'm a very calculated person. Sat down, weighed the pros and the cons, and is this a path that I want to go down? And ultimately made a decision to go. They called me and told me I got admitted a week before school started. So after that, it was really a sprint into it. And so jumping into law school, I came in first generation student. Very wet behind the ears, didn't have a lot of friends or family to kind of show me the way, give me the tips and tricks and things of that sort. So I came in very just, sponge-like, very just kind of I'm a very social person, very extrovert, but I came into law school very much so, kind of laid back and just kind of scoping out the scene and definitely talking to a lot of upperclassmen and professors. And, one thing that I'm sure you guys are no stranger to at this point is advice from everybody, and one thing about advice, even from Legally Fit, it's you got to take it all in and make sure you're picking apart what's good for you and kind of come up with your own thought on what you need to do and direction. And that's what I did my 1L year. Fortunately, I did really well my 1L year. I got a 4.0, went on to get all A's the second semester, except for one class. Remy, funny enough, it was the professional responsibility class. I'm like, this class is stupid. Okay, I know how to be ethical. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Right? It's simple. But yeah, graduated. Went on to do well first year. Second year, I was, after getting all my good grades, networking, on-campus orgs. I was part of the peer mentor program and the scholars help underclassmen program, and I was on law review. And did all that my second year, networked. I externed for federal judge. I worked at Universal Studios. I really wanted to get as crazy and broad of an experience as possible, especially because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And then, that was second year. And then I went into third year. I became student body president against my original plan, which was to have a calm and relaxed third year. But I did that. I was student body president. And I actually, in my third year, student body president, for those that don't know, it's like your, school student president. And that person typically has the role of being the lead on social events and like the main org that oversees all of the other little orgs, like your entertainment law society or your Armenian law student society, etc. And they're really heavily focused on social events. Well, as student body president, when I was there, I really wanted to bring in a academic aspect.
Recording stopped.
And so I started a, do we need to? Okay. So I started a program called Study with the President, right? And so this was the grassroots version of Legally Fit, where it was on Saturdays, just like this. It was completely free, and it was like, hey, whoever wants to show up on campus on Saturdays, come through, and I'll be here to help, to give you any guidance I can, show you the ropes, etc. And it was from that the idea of Legally Fit was birthed. It was one student who said, man, this was so good, I'd actually pay for this. And that was kind of the light bulb moment. And here we are, 7 years later. We've been running Legally Fit for 7 years now. We are a full-fledged law school coaching service. Our programs and services are designed for every single student. This is not to be associated with tutoring because you need tutoring. It's for everybody, right? This is for those that are struggling, but it's also for those that want to ensure their success and everything in between. We've had many of students who we've helped who've come to us later in their academic careers, and we've helped get off of academic probation. And then we've had students on the other side who we've helped reach the top of their class, become student body president, transfer to that top 10, top 5 school in the nation, and things like that. And then we also have an amazing bar prep division of Legally Fit as well, where we host a bar prep course, 10 weeks. And yeah, that's been blowing up, and that's really where our focus has been for the past 3 years. But again, now that's like where it needs to be, and we're diving back in deep into law school coaching. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Any questions anybody might have before I move on about what I said, my journey, or anything like that, as I look at what's next? Cool. So, one thing I think is cool about my story, kind of share with people, is just kind of like, look, somebody who didn't even plan on going to law school, was able to figure it out and do really well. And so hope that story is always inspirational for you guys to, pump you up and know that you can do it too. And again, I'm here now to give you the tools that I use to succeed in. So let's go ahead now and move into the big picture of today's event. So we are going to talk about 4 different things. There's 4 different sections of today's session. We're going to talk about navigating law school. We're only going to spend a little bit of time here. Nice little big picture on law school, right, from a bird's eye view. Then we're going to get into the fundamentals of law school. This is where we're going to spend a lot of our time, again, going through how to read in brief, how to do your note taking, right? Stuff like that. These little things that can make a big difference. Then we're going to talk about how to get the A, okay? Because what you think is the recipe for getting an A in your class might be different than what the reality is. And then lastly, we're going to talk about our services and what we can do to help you throughout your semester make sure you reach your academic goals. Okay, so to help you follow along in today's session, we're actually going to provide you guys a PDF form of all of the handouts that go with these sections. That's what I'm going to be kind of teaching off of and going off of, and you'll be able to follow along on your own PDF. So you'll see now in the chat a compilation of all of the PDFs. Oh, and just give us a second. We had a little technical difficulty. Our admin got knocked out of the Zoom. Okay. And then lastly, I want to address questions, which is actually a good thing. I imagine everybody in this chat, I'm pretty sure I'll be seeing again, and you'll hear this again, but it's good to understand the flow and the feel of Legally Fit, right? So first off, I hope you guys are enjoying and liking our digital classroom. This is a part of our flow and feel. We was like, all right, if we're going to be online and Zoom learning, let's make it as good as we can. Another big part of it is the flow of our sessions. And so we always want to create a safe space for learning. Again, I was a first generation student, so I am no stranger to very simple questions of just like, what's jurisdiction again, and things of that sort. So all that to say, I've always wanted to create a space where people can feel comfortable asking questions that they may not feel as comfortable in class doing. With that said, we want to make sure that we have a flow. And so if ever at any point there's too many questions, I will correctly or kindly guide us to move those questions to the end of the session. So if you ever have that happen to you, just, that's me just making sure the flow of the class continues well. And the packet is in there now. So go ahead and open up your packets and we can get started. Serious here. So Clyde, man, my first question to you is, which year do you think is the most impactful, right? When you're thinking about 1L year, 2L year, 3L year, which year is the most impactful?
Um, well, for me, it's
Don't overthink it, just a guess, you know what I mean? What's the first thing that comes to mind? What do you feel?
I feel like specifically for me, it would definitely be the first year
Okay.
because just because of like my goals, like what I want to do, especially knowing that like the first semester of law school is gonna basically
Well, yeah. Look, let me stop you there because I'm gonna go into which one it is, and it's probably gonna be the same for every student. So your guess is 1L year, and that's right. Okay, and I'm gonna get into why. But 1L year, guys, is definitely the most impactful. It's a little unfortunate that it's that way because this is also the year you would think you would have a little bit of like grace with learning the style of law school and what you have to do. That's what makes 1L year so difficult. Is that there's so much on the line with 1L year, and you're also in this new environment learning this new style of reading and writing and so much work to do, etc. But yes, 1L year is the most impactful. And then Clyde, one more quick guess. Out of the 3 years, which year do you think is the most difficult? Do you think 1L year is the most difficult, 2L, or 3L?
I would say one of
And so for this question, it's actually going to be 2L year. To me, 1L year is not very difficult because I don't think, and hopefully you guys will see shortly throughout the semester working with this, that it's very difficult. It's just new. And if you get on the right track early on, it could be and should be a very smooth 1L year. So I don't think 1L year is necessarily the most difficult. I think 2L year is the most difficult. And a big reason that is because 1L year, all you have to focus on is your classes. Like literally, that's it. You don't have to think about networking, jobs. You don't have to think about on campus organizations and being involved in them heavily and all of these different things. So, 2L year, you actually have to balance so much more in your personal life, in your extracurricular life, and then also your classes get a little bit more difficult. You start dealing with classes like con law, right, and business associations. They're a little bit more meaty and kind of like philosophical. They're not as like element based as torts or contracts. So most difficult year is probably going to be 2L. So with that said, I just want to give you guys a little overview. The details of some of this stuff you can read on your own. A few highlights I want to touch on, but this is just getting the lay of the land. It's very important, I think, to just know how law school works from that big picture, so you can kind of plan out what your journey will look like. And so we see here, for the first thing for 1L year, it's that 1L grades matter. Okay? And so at the end of the day, it's like no matter what it is you want to do, you're going to set yourself off the best way possible with a strong 1L GPA. I kind of think of this like a board game. Think of something like, old school like Candyland or, whatever it may be where you kind of have to move on the board. And think of it where it's like as a 1L, your GPA determines if you take that easy route to your goal, just the one that goes straight to your goal, straight path. And if you don't have a great GPA, you can still get to your goals, which is always important to realize, but you'll be taking the like looped way, right? So it's like you can do the straight shot way with a good GPA, or it's like you have that side of the board where you're doing this and it takes you much longer to get there. And so obviously we want a good GPA so we can start off here, and that's why your grades matter. This turns into getting the job you want, getting scholarship. Everybody wants money to pay for school, right? Maintaining that scholarship if you're fortunate enough to already have one, etc. Okay, so 1L grades, most important thing of this year. Okay, keep that in mind when you're thinking about getting involved early on with on-campus organizations and things like that. I always recommend that you take a very light role, if any role, in on-campus organizations and things like, the different orgs and societies. Like, sure, sign up, go to the meetings here and there, but I would recommend that you don't take on a role that takes up too much of your time. The next note for 1L year: steady pace. It's a marathon, not a race. Now, this is super important. And for some of us, this is going to be a great time in our lives to revisit our style of working. For those that like to procrastinate, let me tell you right now that law school is not the place where you want to keep that habit. Okay? So, what we have here is that the key is work hard at a steady and comfortable pace for the entire semester. Know your deadlines and important dates so that you manage your time well and stay on top of or even ahead of your work. Do not procrastinate. So with your 1L year, expect there to be both lulls and times of chaos. You cannot avoid that. There are going to be times where it's like, oh, things are seemingly kind of slowed down a little bit. If you get too comfortable in that lull, what's going to happen is when it gets chaotic, you're going to have to go from like being relaxed to like, all right, now I'm back on edge and I'm back, full sprint. And so what I highly recommend to avoid those lulls and then those chaotic moments that could stress us out is that you take a steady pace. And I use an analogy here is that keep it at 65 miles per hour the entire semester. So even when you're in those lulls, keep your foot on the pedal and, get ahead a little bit, figure out what you need to do, but don't think like, okay, now I could, start going to the beach a little bit more often and, start hanging out more often. It's like, no, let me kind of stay focused and stay locked in. Clyde, how long is your first semester of law school?
I believe it ends in December, no?
All right, so how many months we got to the end of 1L's first semester?
About like 4 months.
About 4 months. 4 months, guys. That's it. Small sacrifice. And that 4 months can be, again, the difference between this path and this path. So, again, keep that in mind of just like staying focused, keep that 65 miles per hour, and just stay on it. Okay? Next, properly prioritize your legal writing course. So it's pretty standard practice, right? That where you're a 1L wherever you're at. And I saw on today's list, we got some Southwestern here, we got some Pepperdine, some UMass, Boston, Loyola, etc. Wherever you're at as a 1L, you probably have a legal writing course. Typically, a legal writing course will have a final paper due somewhat in the middle of the semester. Now, it's a little too much to give you guys all the detail now, but I want you to remember to refer back to this PDF as your laws or your legal writing class starts to pick up and it's demanding. But here's your kind of note to keep in the back of your mind. Prioritize laws when it's becoming demanding and put your classes on the back burner. Why is that? Because your grade for your laws, again, your writing course, is determined by this like mid-semester work. So if you're prioritizing it as much as you are a class that doesn't have a final exam until the end of the semester, right, then you're kind of throwing things off a little bit. And so sometimes people will like, I'm not going to focus on laws right now because I'm still behind on contracts. But it's like, hey, no, you have to get comfortable with this feeling of like, think of a stove. You got to put your laws on the back burner sometimes and your doctrinal classes on the front burners. And then sometimes you have to switch it. You got to put your doctrinal classes on the back burner and put laws on the front burner. So get comfortable with that notion right now. And then I have some tips in your PDF to guide you when you need to look at that. Okay? Now, this is my favorite 1L, topic and question. What can I do now to make sure I pass the bar? My answer is simple and easy. Stop thinking about the bar exam as a 1L, right? So this is just the nature of the bar exam having such a low pass rate, right? Especially for all of those taking the bar in California. For everybody in other states, it varies obviously, but California has been a pandemic in itself of the bar passage rate and how far it's dropped over the years. And so what that has done is caused the anxiety to not just kind of start 3L year, but now bleed all the way into 1L year. And my biggest advice is like, take away the anxiety, take away the stress. Because guess what? Your 1L subjects are going to be on the bar, right? So let's go with Brandon. Brandon, you there?
Hey D,
What's
yeah, thanks for taking the time. I'm here.
Yeah, what's up, man? So
Hey,
Brandon,
Rose, nice to meet you.
yeah, nice to meet you too, dude. So keeping it simple, and then I remember the last name. Who told you about today?
Elijah.
Elijah, man. Yeah, he's gonna actually be on a little bit later to speak to everybody, but that's
Oh,
awesome.
awesome.
Yep. So Brandon, to that topic, the bar exam. We're talking about 1L year. What's the only thing that you need to focus on 1L year, right, to kind of help with the bar exam? What do you think?
Getting those A's in those core classes.
That's it, right? So it's like, again, it's all simplified. Those classes that you're taking in 1L year are going to be on the bar exam, your contracts, your Civ Pro, your Crim Law, Crim Pro, all those good things, and focus on killing those, right? For me, I got A's in those courses because I understood them well. When I got to the bar exam, it was a lot easier to recall on some of that because I didn't have to relearn it. I just had to refresh it. So that's all you guys need to do for the bar exam, okay? And then the last thing we have here for 1Ls is have fun with it. Now, this is something that you really have to make some asserted effort on for some of us because it's naturally a very intense environment. And so my whole thing is that I enjoyed my whole entire law school experience. So I know it's possible. And I know others who have done it as well. It's not the vast majority, but it's possible for everybody. It's a lot easier to have fun with it when things are clicking. It's a lot easier to have fun with it when you're getting good grades and all of those things. But make sure you remember, even in this phase that's so early on, to have fun with it. You know, take the pressure off. You are in freaking law school, right? You have the opportunity now to be a top 1%er in the world as far as career path and how much money you're going to make. And so don't equate that to pressure. Have some excitement and good feel with that and be honored to be here to learn the law and be ready to soak in this information. Right. And so the more you just kind of get into that mindset of gratefulness and I'm just here to learn and pick that up, that translates to better results. Okay. So that's 1L year. Now, I know we have a 2L in here or two, and I want to kind of address, briefly, what 2L year is about. And this is also good for 1Ls to have, again, a little bit of a scope of what the rest of your journey is going to look like. Now, again, 2L year is all about balance. 2L year, you can't focus just on grades anymore. You got to get into those externships and internships. You got to start networking so you have a job after graduation. And so the demands of 2L year are for you to balance all of these things properly. Now, with that said, what I have here in this PDF is for all my 2Ls, right? Basically, I kind of have if you're on this path or if you're on this path, what are your prioritizations and then how do I rank them? As a quick example, if you're on, let's say, start on this path. If you're on this path where you already had a strong 1L year and strong GPA, well, you get to, number one, focus on getting an internship, externship, right? Second, you better network, work. You got to get out there and meet people. You got to start getting out there and shaking hands and, meeting some judges, some attorneys and all of that so you can figure out where you want to work and where you want to be. Can't stress that enough. It's very important for me that you guys all find career paths that are actually aligned with your interest and what you want to do. And the only way you can do that is by meeting people, hearing their story, hearing what their day-to-day is like at their jobs, etc. Okay? Then you have the rest of that list on there. Now, if you're on this side of it where you didn't do as hot as you wanted to 1L year, well, the first thing on your list of 2L year is improving that GPA because it's still going to be important to do so. So you see, right, that is your area of focus. And then from there, you can network and then get extern, intern. But yeah, that's why I want you guys to do so well as 1Ls so that way you can kind of put, your GPA on the back burner. If you've done well your 1L year, you've already built the skills and style and you know how to do well. So you're not figuring that out in your 2L year. But again, I want to always give the reminder that no matter where you are and no matter how you started off, you can always get to your goal. All right. So never get defeated and make sure you just kind of know your path and stay on it. Lastly, I'll quickly mention the 3Ls. There's nothing here in the PDF yet, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to add some in here in the 3Ls for the 3Ls. And for now, here's my, message that you don't have in here as well. 3L year is all about essentially, kind of winding down and preparing for the bar exam. 3Ls, I want you guys to make sure you are pacing yourself throughout the year. Make sure you have all these important dates for like, graduation students day where you have to learn, about getting your cap and gown and all this stuff and this and that. Make sure you're staying organized with all this stuff. Don't stress yourself out with everything that's happening. Definitely don't stress yourself out with getting ready for the bar exam. Now, mentioning that, here's what you could and should do to erase any kind of anxiety around the bar exam. Number one, start early as of like next week, next month at the latest. Start vetting bar prep companies, right? Legally Fit has a bar prep company, but I'm never like everybody should sign up. I do think we have the absolute best bar prep on the market, but I want everybody to do their due diligence to make sure they feel comfortable with whatever bar prep they chose, and they did so by interviewing companies, right? Figuring out what's best for them. And then you can go into a bar prep knowing like, yep, this is my chosen bar prep. I made this decision knowing more or less what I was going to get from each company. So that'll really help you feel comfortable and confident. You can also consider some early bar prep programs to kind of do a little bit of that work, early on to lighten the load during bar prep. And then the last thing that I want to mention is make sure, this is like a key, is to focus on those bar tested subjects that you're taking in your 3L year. I know you got the senioritis, I know you got one foot out of the door, but you really want to ace or do really well in those wills and trust classes, community property classes, whatever you're taking that's on the bar in your 3L year, do well, because in like 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be, you're going to be redoing that for the bar exam. And so it's just, beneficial to be ready for those classes. Okay, so that's it on navigating, law school from a big picture. Any questions on navigating law school, the journey, 1L year, 2L year? Any questions, based off of what we talked about, please? Yeah, Brandon.
So I just started. I want to say orientation was 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, so this is like the first week this week,
Yeah.
and I already kind of feel like I'm falling behind, like with the reading and all the assignments and stuff. What should we be doing now to stay on top of all the reading and all the work?
Man, that's a very good question. And I think that's going to all get answered in these fundamentals, right? And so, with that, let me just give you a quick answer to that. One, totally normal and natural. Like you should feel more or less that way. Every student is going to feel like, oh my God, I'm behind. Remember what I said in the beginning, and you guys all should like really kind of keep in the back of your head to ease the anxiety with this throughout the semester. There is no way to do all of the work that's given to you in law school. Absolutely not. You cannot, spend as much time as you would like on every case that you need to read and brief. You cannot do every single practice exam for every single class on top of that. And go to every little networking event, all these different things that happen. So we have to get so comfortable with like, all right, what are the things that are important and what do I need to spend my time? And so, Brandon, that's actually what we're going to talk about between the fundamentals and then also how to get the A. Like with all that you have to do, where do you need to spend your time to get your desired results? So we're going to actually go ahead and, jump into that. That was the only question or the hand raise that I saw. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into fundamentals. Let me just erase this. Okay. All right, so let's get into the fundamentals. All right, guys, so again, this is the fun stuff. This is where we're going to attack some of those things that, we've already started doing. And so it's early on in the semester, so it's still a good time, a great time to implement these systems because this is what I had to figure out, in my 2L year. I'm just optimizing well, how am I reading? And then how am I note taking and all these things? All right, so that first one we have here is homework reading system. And just out of curiosity, real quick, Brandon, let me ask you, so far, right, because you've gotten into reading for classes, what kind of method have you been doing, right? The problem that we have here is managing the heavy load of cases required for each class, right? So much. The solution, there's two options. Steady pace wins the race method, and there's also the what I call the bite the bullet method. Steady pace wins the race is you are reading in a very short time frame away from the class, right? So if you have a class on Tuesday, I'm reading that either Tuesday in the morning if it's an evening class, or I'm reading that on Monday. But I'm trying to read that case for that class as close to the class as possible. And then the bite the bullet method is like, I'm just going to read all my cases over the weekend and then, just have to do a little bit of a refresher throughout the week. So, Brandon, have you done one of these or some variation of it? Yeah, what have you been doing so far?
Yeah, so I've been getting reading assignments in pretty much all my classes, like torts, contracts, crim law, civ pro. And then on top of that, laws assignments. So I've been kind of prioritizing turning in what's actually due. And like the syllabus counts for participation points.
Yep.
So prioritizing that.
So as far as your case reading though, just focusing on your case reading, because you said so many cases for all the classes, are you kind of trying to read all of them at once, or are you kind of like, pacing them out in that way?
Oh yeah, so yeah, I'm so behind that I've kind of just been doing the first method you said, where it's just like doing it right before the class.
Good. So at the end of the day, this is the actual preferred method. And some of us may kind of feel naturally a little uncomfortable with this method because it feels a little bit like procrastination, right? Because it's like, maybe I should read this like well before class, so I'm not waiting to the last minute. So I want to give you the philosophy and the mindset behind this. All right, and kind of quickly break this down. Let's just stick with one class. We know we have a lot of classes, but let's just stick with one. So let's say you have contracts. And then, right, for contracts, you have that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And let's say, right, let's say Monday's case is dealing with offer, right, the general rule. Let's say Wednesday's case is dealing with offer, right? Things that are not offers. Things not offers. And let's say Friday, you just happen to be, let's say, moving on to acceptance. Now, here's the thing. These are all foreign concepts to you guys. You guys are learning all of this stuff for the first time, and it's some difficult stuff, right? It's different. So what happens is, if you try on the weekend before the weekend to read all three cases, right? And this is just for one class. All three cases, what you're trying to do is understand and like hold in your brain all three of these concepts. So you're actually making it more difficult that you're needing to kind of like take on all of this at once and understand all three of these cases and what they're trying to teach you. And so what happens for me, when I see this method is that you just start to lose some of your understanding for each of these, especially when you start to throw in then now you have your torts reading and you also have your property reading, right? Or whatever else it may be, then everything starts to get a little bit more jumbled. Where what I'm saying is that, let's say it's the weekend and we're still dealing with just contracts, you just focus on offer, your general rule. And then what happens is you do this on Sunday, you really soak in offer, and you're just focused on offer. That's it. And then guess what? You go to class, and then now you get to learn on offer and what the teacher thinks is the takeaways from this case, etc. Okay, cool. And then after you finish that, you can kind of put that behind you, right? Or, put it away in your filing cabinet. And then now you get to mentally focus on the next thing. I'm focused now on things that are not offers. So I'm not crowding my plate, right? Which is what the goal is. So that's why we do this steady pace wins the race. The closer that I read the case to class, the less kind of confusion I can have, the less distractions and things like that. Does that make sense, Brandon?
That makes sense. So I guess the question I have for you is, for instance, I'm already behind on some of my readings from last week. like
Yeah.
from torts and contracts. I'm not specifically sure on what the rule or what the exact thing they were trying to teach. But should I be going back and trying to catch up on last week's reading, or should I move forward?
Absolutely not. Definitely move forward and have like a clean slate. So anybody who feels like they're in those shoes already, it's just kind of like, start fresh. The good thing is that just like, undergrad, the beginning of the semester is typically not as important. A lot of times you're just kind of getting your feet wet, and whatever you kind of missed as far as the detail of what you would like to do in your case reading, it will come out eventually when you polish up your outline and you'll figure out what you've needed. Because, we'll talk about this later, but realize this. Every case you read, right, you have this full-on brief, right, all this information. At the end of the day, the way law school works, guys, is that you have to go through all of this super long case to take out maybe these 2 lines that are important and are going to make it to your outline. So just to give you guys, again, the like simplicity and the vision that even I didn't have as a 1L, this is the way it works. Law school teaches through a case-based method. Instead of giving you the rule that you need, the concept that you need, they give you a case where that rule or concept is buried inside of that case. So what you're reading is the whole story, right? The whole movie, but you just need that one scene out of there. And so, and that's what you do throughout the entire semester is watch this entire case, this entire movie to just figure out what's that important scene or 2 that I need to take out. Now, what Legally Fit does, which is why, we're really effective at what we do, we reverse that. Instead of, we don't focus on cases and what we do. I'm just going straight to the meat. Here's what the rule is. Here's what the concept is. And then giving you hypos to help explain it, right? As opposed to, again, starting off with the movie and then here's the concept. Does that make sense, Brandon?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Perfect.
And then just what about for the laws? What about those readings? Like
let's hold off on laws classes. I definitely want to answer that question, but because laws is really different. Let's keep that towards the end for all right, some more questions on like how I could catch up and things like that. Cool.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. And so that's why I said to Brandon that don't feel too worried about going back in the first week and redoing all of that, because out of all that stuff you did in your first week, it's just a section or 2 that comes from all of that. And again, I know that stuff will surface when you do your outlines and whatnot. So yeah, don't feel like you need to catch up. Okay, so let's now get into reading and briefing 5-step process. All right, so Alyssa, are you here? Or I know you're here, but are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
There we go. How you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. All right, so where are you at? You at Loyola, right?
I am.
Awesome. Okay, and you've started classes. Have you already started doing reading and briefing?
I am. Yeah, I did.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to ask, can you tell me, right, how is reading and briefing going for you so far? And really, I want to know, has it been easy or has it been difficult? And then how long has it been taking you?
So I'm the 2L in this class.
Oh, okay.
So my readings are a little different than all the traditional ones. I'm taking evidence. I'm taking criminal procedure, trial ad, and appellate ad.
Got you. Okay, so look, I definitely want to revisit you on something else then for this one, because as you know at this point, reading and briefing is what you have to figure out 1L year, and you kind of got it down by 2L. I'm going to go to a 1L and come back to you.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Let's go with K-Naz. What's up?
Hi, D.
Everybody, K-Naz is one of my high school friends who is now going to law school, so super, super dope always whenever I get to help out a friend. But K-Naz, you haven't started your reading and briefing yet.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, all right. We're going to come back to you too. All right,
Okay.
we got Eva. Is that pronounced correctly?
Yes, that's Eva.
All right. Oh, Eva or Ava?
Eva.
Ava. Awesome. Are you a 1L who has done some reading and briefing?
No, I just want to get something for the bar prep, but I'm taking my LLM.
Okay, awesome. We'll get some stuff for you. Okay. All right, we're going back to Brandon. All right, Brandon.
Oh, wait, yeah, I'm here. What was the question again?
So reading and briefing, how long has it taken you, and like what's the difficulty level that you've been having with it?
Yeah, I guess it's probably been taking me like a couple hours to like really understand the case, and then I would first go through and read the whole case, which would take like an hour to like
Mm-hmm.
really try to understand it, and then probably another hour to brief it, or maybe longer.
Okay, and that's not too bad. If you're kind of like in that 2 hour range, it's definitely a good start. For some of us, we may be in that 3 to 4 hours for a single case, and it's like, there's no way we have the time to do that. So let's make sure we understand that going into it. And so, yeah, everybody has maybe a style or a system that they might already be using to read and brief. And so, what I want to give you is something to super optimize your reading and briefing system. Okay, so step number one is anchor. Right? This is where you look up your assigned case in the table of contents of your textbook. Brandon, you're again learning these cases to teach you a particular lesson. How long do you think these cases have been used to teach these principles?
Since the beginning, like
Of time?
for like for like 60 years. I don't know.
Exactly. So again, let's wrap our head around that these cases have been used for years. Some of these cases date back to the 19 freaking 80s, 1990s, right? Etc. We're not even really getting, I don't know if it's started to make its way there yet. A lot of 2000s cases. You'll hear some 1950s cases. So the whole thing is that these cases have been used to teach, again, this particular lesson repetitively for years. And so the first thing that you need to do is understand, what is my purpose inside of this case? And that's what's called an anchor. It's like, why am I here? I like to think of this as like when I go into the grocery store, you need to know, why am I here? Otherwise, you're going to end up with a grocery cart full of things that you don't need, and right, you buy everything. And that can happen with the case. So let's say you're reading your first case, you go to the table of contents, you see that's within the offer section. Well, you know that this case is focused on offer. But remember, the case is a whole movie, and they have to give you the big picture. So in that case, right, Brandon, you might then also see the full thing where they talk about acceptance as well. They talk about consideration as well, etc. But knowing what you're there for, Brandon, if you start to get a little confused, which is natural to do so, on some of these other concepts, are you going to focus a lot of time on understanding that right now? Brandon?
No.
No. The answer is no, because that's not what you're here for. So that's something very important, because this focusing on what's not important is a lot of times why we spend more times in cases than what we need. All right. So that is what anchoring is all about. Why am I here? Next is review a canned brief online of the case. So this is what for some people might be the controversial thing to do. Now, I'm all about using resources, but never as a crutch, but only as, an additional resource. And so back to that point that these cases have been taught for years and years, people have already pre-outlined these things to get to what they're traditionally taught for. So, and they're typically translated into much easier to read language, as opposed to, again, some of this outdated legalese that you'll find in your cases. And so you want to review an online canned brief because it's just like somebody like DeAndre telling you really easily and clearly what this case is about and what the importance is. So once you do that, Brandon, you're then able to kind of like, before you actually even open up that textbook, you then now have an idea of what this case is about. You got the important facts, not just like the entire facts, but the important ones, and you have the lay of the land. Now, guess what? When you then getting into reading your case, this makes it all so smooth. Some of the things that might be confusing in the legalese is now better understood because it was already translated for you. So it improves your time reading the case. Now, for 1Ls, it is very important that you do read your cases. I have a love-hate relationship with reading and briefing, but in no way do I ever say avoid reading and briefing. Reading and briefing is like your rite of passage. That's how you get, put in and thrown into the law world. You're seeing in these cases the use of IRAC. the flow of a brief, which is going to look a lot like how you write exams and things like that. So you need to get familiar with this like formatting and how people talk in these documents. So you have to do it, okay? Step number 4. This is the most important step, guys. This is the step that many will overlook. This is the step that you won't see in many attack plans for reading and briefing, and it's think about the case. So naturally, we have so much kind of just like pressure. We're feeling behind on our work or whatever it may be. It's like, all right, I got to do this case. Okay, let me figure out what I got to do. Okay, let me read this case. Okay, this person got into a contracting or construction contract with this person. Okay, cool, whatever. And then let me start briefing it. And it's just like you're moving too fast. I need you to take a second after you read the case to like let it all like simmer in and settle in. And it's like asking yourself, why are the parties upset? What do they want here? And how's the law going to help them? Doing that simple step, guys, is going to be so beneficial in your deep understanding of the law and of these situations. That is going to translate to being able to ask yourself that same question on your final exam. Why are the parties upset? And what area of law can I use to help here? So, man, superstar that or write that note down, thinking about the case to just get grounded and accept what's going on and make sure you're processing it and feeling it is a very, very important step. All you have to do is take like 5 minutes to do that, by the way. And then the last step is brief your case, right? So you guys pretty much understand that professors may have a style, like little quirks on how they want you to do it, but you go through it. A lot of times you just follow your IRAC. What's the important issue, rule, analysis, conclusion? But again, tailor that if your professor wants something a little bit different. Okay, so that's everything on reading and briefing. Recommendations for time allotted is 1 hour max for a single case, and then 3 hours max for an entire class. All right, we're going to talk about a little bit later, why and how to get the A. You don't want to overspend your time here. So we can hold off on maybe any thoughts or feelings around that. But does anybody have any questions regarding case reading and just these 5 steps? Yeah, we got a couple. Remy.
I couldn't figure out how to unmute. So for my classes, I've had, for my core classes, I've had like 5 cases a night. I'm wondering if I should be reading one case, going through all the steps for that one case, and then briefing before I move on to the next case,
yes.
Or just read all of them.
Yes. And again, I want you to get so kind of used to this like concentrated work type of thing, right, Remy? So it's like you just read that case. It's going to be the most time effective for you to brief that case right after. But if you read all 5 cases and then now you have you're jumbling now all these facts, all these rules, when you get into each one, you kind of have to get reoriented with it. And so, yeah, for efficiency purposes, for sure, read one and then brief it right after.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Clyde?
All right, so for me, number one, that anchor part that you mentioned definitely sounds like extremely helpful. And the way that I've been doing it, and I basically just want input from you on why that would be considered to be like this method would be better than the one that I'm doing right now. It's I would read the case, I would try to brief it first, and then depending on how I do, I would literally just go on Quimby and see what the actual issue is, the actual reasoning, the conclusion, stuff like that.
Yes.
And that's what I learned from that. But would you recommend doing it like that, or the way that you're saying right now to do it?
Man, perfect question. And yeah, that's a way that a lot of people use a Quimby or a canned brief, a pre-made brief, is afterwards. And so, one, I love the mentality that Clyde has and why he does that. Clyde is thinking you know what? I need to give this my best effort first before I look at this canned brief. I want to see if I can figure it out on my own. Now, what I'll tell you, Clyde, is that there are going to be a lot of other times in your 1L year in different regards that you'll be able to use that in a more impactful way. For example, doing practice exams is where you want to really use that type of mindset. But considering the overall importance of reading and briefing, which again now I'll just quickly mention, somebody that reads and briefs every class to perfection can remember all the facts of every case, right? All of these things. Clyde, do you think it's that person that's getting the A in the class?
I think it's more about who can apply the law the best.
Exactly. So yes or no question. Do you think it's the person who has every case down, did thorough reading and briefing of every single case? Do you think it's that person who gets the A? Yes or no?
No, I don't.
Typically, it's not, because if a person ever spent so much time perfecting their reading and briefing, they likely did not do their practice exams and the outlining. And those are the two main things that actually translates to doing well. And so all that to say, Clyde, is that method does kind of give you this like bootstrapped way of going through the cases and could be a little bit confident building in that way. However, it's just not necessary for you to use that energy there. So by doing it this way that I've shared with you, Clyde, you'll be able to get through this now faster to then give you more time for the things that are actually impactful for you to get the A. That makes sense?
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect. So yeah, again, that method totally is cool, but this method will be faster to allow you to spend the time where it really should be spent. Awesome. Brandon, you got one?
Yeah, just a quick question. So you're saying 1 hour max for a single case. Does that include reading and briefing?
Yes, like you want to try to get to that point. Now, obviously, you're not in the first couple of weeks, in the first month, like you're not going to start off there, but that is what you're shooting for. All right. And then again, when we get to how to get the A, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. And I know we're going to do it there. So we're going to move on from reading and briefing now, but I definitely want to revisit that when we get to how to get the A.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Now we're moving on to the next section. Okay. And then so also, just as a quick little shout out, K-Nas, right? You have the benefit that you guys haven't started school yet. And as you're kind of hearing that all these students have like implemented these styles already, right? You really now have to, or you get the opportunity to pick what you want and start off with that. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're going, because you don't have anything to go off of yet.
Yeah, I'm like low-key really lost, but I'm figuring out. But
yeah, it's just like, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just like thinking like, okay, but like I have these like things to follow, so it's really helpful to like be in here right now, but also I'm like, oh my god, like low-key freaking out.
What did I get myself into now?
Yeah.
It'll all make sense. It'll all flow together. But yeah, it's a great place to be doing this before you even start.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the note-taking methods. Now, what's the problem here? Staying organized with so many notes from so many different sources. All right, so this is again something that I had to like keep trialing and erring through law school through my first year, and then I came up with like, all right, this is now the best way. It's the most optimized way. So we have here two solutions, and then I'm going to give you my preferred method. So this optimized preferred method is the consolidated method, where I actually will take all of my notes and stuff and put it into one place, one single document for each class. This then becomes a running document. It'll be very long, but it's everything in one place. All of your cases and notes will be there, and then now you get to use that convenient Command F, or if you're using PC, I think it's like Control F, I forget, I haven't used a PC in so long, but you can use that search feature to find whatever it is that you're looking for. Another method outside of the consolidated method is the everything separate method, right? So the everything separate is like, and that's how I started, that's how most people start, where it's like, you have contracts, and it's like, you have your cases and your briefings for those. And then you have like a file for literally each case and each brief, right? All of those. And then you also have like, any notes that you want to take. And those notes can be split up between notes from your reading versus notes from class. And sometimes people will have separate documents for these, okay? And so that's usually most of what it is. You might also have like questions, and then you might get answers to those questions, and those are important. And sometimes that can be in its own separate Word document as well. Now, at the end of the day, what happens is that when it's time to outline, guys, you're going to have to consolidate all of these things into one document with what, again, are the important rules and takeaways. And so it makes this task a little bit more difficult, again, when you're funneling so much into one document. So here's how I recommend that you do it. Now, Alyssa, this is something that I recommend for 2Ls. A lot of times 2Ls might not have this method as well. So, this is not something that you've done already. It could be very helpful for your evidence, right, in your 2L classes. So this consolidated method is you have contracts, okay? The first thing that you're going to do, and you're going to do this for each class, is you're going to create a skeleton of the class based off of the syllabus given to you. Now, different professors vary in how much detail they'll give there, but some professors do a great job and almost give you an outline of the class in their syllabus. But if not, you just follow like the readings and kind of just like what's the order of topics. So let's say first thing I'm going to do is offer, right? The next topic is acceptance. Let's just stick with those two topics for now. Let's say the professor happens to choose a number of 6 different cases that he's going to use to teach you the different principles of offer. Now, instead of having those cases in 6 different separate files, what you're going to do is under offer, have each case there. The first case is Brandon versus Clyde, right? Then in this document, you're going to do your whole entire brief right here, all right? Then guess what? Oh, I don't have another color. Let's imagine this next section is green. But what you're going to do here after your brief is you're going to put any notes that you have for yourself, any reading notes after your brief. So again, now you're bringing this into that one document. So I just finished reading this case. These are some like issues I'm having or some questions that I'm having. This is a great place to put your questions as well. So notes/questions, right? Then guess what? You've done your homework. You've read this case. You've briefed this case. You figured out what you know, what you don't know, what questions you have. Then you go to class on that topic. Now the professor is going over this case. Now, what you're going to want to do is in red ink, write in the class notes that you get and anything that's different. Okay? So then now, again, cases, notes, questions, literally now, instead of being in separate documents, all in one organized place. And then what you're going to do is simply add the next case. Then number 2. And then there we have Alyssa versus DeAndre, right? And then the same thing. You're going to do your brief. You're going to do your notes/questions. Then you're going to do your class notes. Okay? We're going to talk about class notes in a bit and how much you should be writing down because some of us overdo it and some of us underdo it. So we're going to talk about class notes in more detail, but this is about just the note-taking method. Now, the benefit of this, guys, is that you've already essentially pre-outlined some of this material. You now have it organized. You're not just having a list of infinite cases in single files. All of your cases for offer are in your offer section. So it's organized. If you need to remember, oh, what was that case that we did a unilateral offer on? And you need to find that. Well, now you have this document. You can just Command F unilateral offer, and then you'll find where it pops up in all of what you have. But if you do this method and you're looking for the case that dealt with unilateral offer, you have to go into each file individually until you find which one it was. So again, so helpful to do it this way. Okay? So I think that summarizes and gives all the detail of how this method works. Is that clear? Are there any questions on this note-taking method? Brandon?
Should we include dates of the classes, or is that irrelevant?
I don't think it'll ever be super helpful, you know. It doesn't hurt if that's how you like to be and it's organized in that way and you feel like you may remember things based off of the date. But I think the Command F feature to just get to the specific thing that you're looking for will probably be the most beneficial.
Thanks.
Yeah. Is this how similar or different is this than what you've been doing so far, Brandon?
I like what you're doing more. I was doing it in the same document, but I was doing like all my notes and then underneath it, like all the lecture notes.
Got you. And then
So
what
that-
about in the same document as your brief?
Yeah, in
Gotcha.
the same document as my brief, but it's still like separated. Your version's better because now I can put the notes actually inside the brief. It's more consolidated.
Perfect. Awesome, man. So there it is. And it's just like it should, man, take down the anxiety, make it simple for you. You brief your class. Then you write, whatever notes or questions you had just off of doing that case. Then you get to class. And then you write your class notes, and boom, everything's in one place. Easy peasy. And then you do that for every class, right? So you do that for torts. You do that for whatever else. I gave you guys a little bit of a diagram for you guys to have later as well. If you look at page 6 of this document, you'll have that. And again, you can look at that for later. And actually, let's go ahead and just talk about a few of the other notes there. All right. So Brandon, I'm just going to kind of walk through it with you just so we see it. So you see how right on the left-hand side, we have a more detailed version of what I put here. That's the version of now having these notes. And what we did there was just kind of embellish on the brief and actually put issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, and give a more formal that. But you see in the green, I have my question or my reading notes, and then red, I have my class notes. Now, what we have on the right side of that, guys, is your outline. So do realize, remember I told you at the very beginning, and Remy, I see your question, by the way, I'll get to you. Remember I told you at the beginning of making this document, this notes document, take the skeleton of your class from your syllabus to kind of have as the framework. Well, you're going to make 2 copies of that. You're going to make 1 copy that's then going to be used for your notes, and then you're going to make a second copy of that, and then that's going to be your outline. So, your outline is going to be, right, contracts, and it's going to have the same skeleton. It's going to have offer, and it's going to have acceptance. And then the idea is that once you go through all 6 of your cases for offer, you finish that, and now you don't, guys, please do not fluff up those outlines, all right? There's always going to be somebody who's like, my outline is like 150 pages, and it's like, no, that's your notes document. Your outline has to be consolidated. You do not need to bring in the facts of the cases, maybe 1 or 2 here or there if it's a troubling topic for you, but you're taking out, remember, that scene, that one takeaway or those 2 takeaways, and that is where the art comes in, and you, from all 6 cases, you figure out what your takeaways are, and then that only goes into your outline for the same section. So those are your takeaways. And then the same thing for acceptance. Let's say you have 5 cases there. You will then finish those 5 cases, figure out those takeaways, and then just move it over to this version right here. So takeaways. And so again, one more time. Starting off, what your homework assignment will be, and it's in here, is for each class to create this skeleton document based off of your syllabus. From there, one will be your notes, and the other one will be your outline. After that, you're then going to use your notes one pretty much every day, and you're going to fill in your cases, your personal notes and questions, and your class notes. You're going to keep doing that until you finish a section, and then you'll get all the takeaways and then put that into your corresponding outline. What's now the additional benefit here, guys, is that your outline and your notes are also consistent with each other. So again, being able to find things and see things is just making it easier as opposed to everything being a mess and all over the place. All right, Remy, What's your question?
Yeah, back to briefing for a moment. Do you recommend that when we brief, we take notes from the case verbatim or that we rephrase them?
When you're saying take notes from the cases verbatim versus, give me an example of a type of note that you're thinking about.
Oh, so maybe notes isn't the right word. Like, should we take quotes from the cases verbatim, like specifically what the justices said? Or should we rephrase it?
A little bit of both, Remy. And here's one thing that for all of my 1Ls and even some of the 2Ls that need to know this message is this. In law school, you definitely want to get comfortable with plagiarizing. When it comes to your doctrinal classes, when it comes to your laws class, do not plagiarize, you will get kicked out of law school. But when it comes to your contracts, your torts, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and remember that. But it is also good to, Remy, be able to put things into your own words. So you're just going to find that balance, but know that it's not necessary to put it in your own words. That's only really for the benefit of you understanding it better and being able to like talk about it comfortably. But there is a huge acceptance of just like, here are the verbatim facts. Here's what happened. And of course, you might need to like use your judgment in how you kind of like summarize those, but you can still take exactly what happened. And then even in the analysis, like this is what they said, and then maybe embellish on it in your own words. So does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, Brandon, was that very clear on the note taking and then how that works and then how that transfers over to your outline?
Yeah, it's very clear. Just one quick question. As far as the class notes, do we incorporate that? Should we be incorporating that into our outline?
Well, no. Again, it's like, well, it's a version of your class notes, and you're stripping away all the fluff, the facts of each case, the detailed analysis of everything. You're just then getting the takeaways and moving that into your outline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so look, guys, 100% this is going to be somebody. And again, a lot of times, students have this like feel of wanting to put everything in their outline, which is not a good idea. The other thing that's great about this method is that when you're trying to figure out these takeaways, and for some of us, it's going to be hard to leave out certain things when we're making our outline. The thing about this system is that you can feel very comfortable leaving things out of this because it's almost like the same document. And so everything that you're going to need to like go into further detail on will be so easy to find because it has the same organization. For example, let's say you're getting all your takeaways, and practically your takeaways from offer, let's just say should be worth 6 lines of material. Right? Let's just say like that's what's important. But let's say Matthew is just obsessive and it's like, no, but I want to put in some more information, and he adds in like all of these extras. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that these extras you want to try to avoid. And again, this is really focused on rules. It's like the number one thing that you're going to be putting in your outline is the rules. All of the stuff from your brief, typically not. And so last thing I'm saying is that the comfort in leaving this out for a student like Matthew is that, hey, it's okay. I can leave this out because I know it's still be here and I could find it when I need it. Okay. Matthew, were you like that?
I was a mess outlining my one all year, so yeah.
So Matthew was an over outliner. All right, guys. So I'm going to erase the board, and now we can move on to the next section. You guys will meet Matthew in a little bit. Matthew is our more recent graduate and member of the Legally Fit team. You guys will definitely be meeting with him, working with him as well. Okay, so next thing we're getting to is class notes. I'm going to work on erasing this board. Oh, Clyde, do you have a question, man?
Yeah, so basically the key takeaways you're saying is like the rules and like key takeaways, like for example the brief for offer. Let's just say like there's something from that brief that you normally wouldn't find like another type of brief. Like the reason why they're explaining this or showing this is because of this specific reason. You put that in for the key takeaways.
Exactly. So like, for example, let me just give you one quick example. Let's say you're reading the case. One of the cases I remember for contracts is like a person wants to go buy a car. He sees an advertisement for a car. He shows up to the car lot. They have a conversation based off of the advertisement they saw. Then the car salesman tries to switch it up on him and sell it to him for a different price and this and that. And they're giving you the whole movie, the whole story behind it. But then at the end of the day, what happened when they went to court and what the case brief tells us is that ads are generally not offers, right? So it's like I went through all of that to know that generally ads are not offers. And then you'll do another case where it's like you go through a whole nother story where then you realize is that, oh, hey, there's an exception to when ads are offers. And that's what this is all about. So this is one of the scenarios where an ad is an offer. But again, you will read this entire case just to kind of bring out that general rule, ads are not offers. Does that make sense? Awesome. So again, really get that concept. Like you're going into each case as a movie, and it's just like, all right, what's the takeaway? What's the important thing here? What am I here for? Okay. So let's now get into class notes. So for class notes, we have things teachers say, and we also have their slides. So things teachers say. Sometimes teachers will speak on things that are not from the reading, that are not on the slides, and can't be found anywhere else. Be sure to note that stuff down, especially if it seems important, right? Self-explanatory. Their slides. Guys, make sure in class you are not transcribing either what the teacher is saying or what is on their slides. Important for you to know which teachers provide you with the slides at the end of the day or the week. If they do, then listen more and take less notes. What you want to do is be very mindful of when the teacher is teaching off the slides and says something that is not included in the slide. So they have their whole slide deck and then they kind of step away and say, okay, so da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Well, that part, perk up and maybe take some notes on that. But don't transcribe, okay? It's so important. I remember in my torts class, guys, my torts professor would give the slides at the beginning of the class with like little fill in the blanks to like make sure the students paid attention. And during class, you would just kind of like fill in the blanks, right, to pay attention. And then at the end of the week, he would give you the completed slides with the blanks filled in. So literally during class, I did everything short of just like putting my feet up on the table and just like sitting back and listening to the professor. So that way I can just soak up the lesson because everything that I needed to write down and fill in the blanks on, he was going to give me later. And I was very attentive and just soaking it up, but not just like, all right, what do I need to write down? And that's what I want you to have when it comes to class notes. Is like you're in there, you're attentive, you're thinking, you're seeing where it's going. You're not just like obsessed with like, what should I be doing? Oh, should I take that note down? Right? That's not where your mind wants to be. You know, last little bit on class notes is, yeah, just overall, make sure when you properly prepare, and you properly prepare by doing your reading and briefing and then like figuring out what your questions and notes are and stuff like that before class, when you properly prepare, those are then less notes that you have to take in class. And do not be that student who like, you know, did the reading and briefing, found the key components and, you know, had a really on point brief, and then is like writing that in repetition during class when he's talking about the good things that you did in your own brief. It's like if you have that already down, do not rewrite that. But sometimes, again, we just feel like we got to write down everything, even if it's repetitive. And so you want to try to get away from that mindset and focus on just locking in during lecture. Okay, so moving on. This is probably, this is the last like big kind of concept of 1L year and, you know, dealing with the material. And then after that, we just got to have some like quick little lessons. So this last big thing is called the flow. So how to process all of this material. All right, so you have at least 4 doctrinal classes. Remember somebody said they only have 3, so that's awesome. You only have 3. That was who was that? Alyssa? No, it wasn't Alyssa. Pepperdine. Who's my Pepperdine student? Remy.
It was me,
Yeah.
Romy.
So you only got 3 classes, so that's awesome. So you're learning difficult material for each class every week. If you aren't working hard to properly process this material each week, it will build up and become a beast you cannot tame. Stay ahead of the game and handle your business consistently throughout the semester. For those that have started law school already, you might have gone through an orientation already that they've kind of alluded to this, where it's just like, do not wait to the end of the semester to outline, and make sure you're doing things accordingly. And I've heard the analogy of like empty the trash bag, or the trash bag will get too heavy, right? There's all these different ways of saying it, but you have to make sure you are processing the material as you go. Now, what I have for you is a little bit more of a concrete way on how that actually works and how that looks. So, look at this flow diagram. Week 1, and we're dealing with just one class still, even though you have to do this for all your classes, we're still dealing with just contracts. Week 1, you'll be learning offer. Looking at that little teal section below, you can use that to guide you. Remy, what are you going to be doing in the learning phase of a topic? Like, what are the 2
reading,
phases?
Briefing,
Mm-hmm.
taking notes in class.
Exactly. So when you're learning something, you're learning it for the first time, right? You are reading and briefing it, and then you're going to class on that. After your class has stopped talking about that topic, you're no longer learning it anymore, okay? So that is what learning it is, reading and briefing it, and then going to class on it. After you learn a topic, that is the immediate trigger for when you should start outlining a topic, okay? Do not outline a topic if you're still in the middle of learning it. Do realize that different topics have different, learning duration periods. Some topics you'll be learning for one class, some topics you'll be learning for an entire week, and then some topics you'll be learning for multiple weeks. So it always varies, and this is why sometimes that lull and chaos kind of comes into play with 1L year. So with that said, after you finish learning is when you can start outlining. Typically, I use weekends to outline whatever I have finished learning that week. Now, once you've moved on from, a clean slate and just starting off with one concept that you're learning, then now you're going to be juggling, right? So in week 2, what do we see that we're doing there based off of this diagram, Remy?
According to the diagram, we're going to be mastering.
Mastering what?
That concept that we were just learning.
Exactly. And then we're also going to be doing what?
Learning a new skill.
Exactly.
Or a new topic.
Exactly. So what we have here in the diagram is that week 1, you're going to be learning offer. Right? And this is obviously assuming that this just is a 1-week learning thing. Of course, this gets a little bit more complicated because durations of learning something could vary. So the idea is that you're learning offer in week 1, and then week 2, your readings and your class focus, let's say, moves on to acceptance. So now you're learning a new topic. Now, whenever you are learning a new topic, in theory, you will, on your own, be simultaneously mastering the previous topic. You can only master a topic after you finished learning it. So make sure you're kind of going with the flow and not putting too much pressure on yourselves to super understand everything in the learning phase. That is what happens in the mastering phase. So you're going to learn offer. Then you're going to master offer and learn acceptance. And then it's the same thing. You're going to go from then learning acceptance to mastering acceptance and then learning the new topic, which we have there as consideration. All right, so Remy, does that make sense of how that you'll be balancing those things, right, throughout the semester, throughout your weeks?
Yes, and this is one thing that I definitely didn't think of.
Awesome. Very good. So and that the thing about so much of this stuff is that, again, it's not necessarily super difficult, but it's just having a clear understanding and a clear big picture of what is going to be asked of you and what you should be doing. And a lot of times, guys, what causes this oh my God, I'm at the end of the semester and I just don't feel ready is because people forget to do the mastering of the previous topic. They're just focused on learning, but you haven't got good with it. You haven't mastered it. So when you get to the end of the semester, you're just like, I don't feel great with anything because you didn't spend the time mastering it. So super awesome. I'm happy to hear that, Remy. And yes, that's where your mindset needs to be. Can you do me a favor, Remy? Can you go ahead and read from the PDF the whole little blurb, the first paragraph on mastering a topic and what goes into that?
Yeah, so mastering a topic is the last step. The goal is to master every topic before walking into your exam. If not every topic, as many as you can. Mastering a topic consists of work outside the classroom. You master a topic by going to office hours, working with Legally Fit, doing sufficient practice questions, etc. Every student is going to read their cases and go to class. Every student is going to put together an outline. Mastering a topic is where the A students separate themselves from the pack.
Cool. You can stop there, and then I'll go into the next one. Here are a few things that goes into mastering a topic. Making sure your outline on that subject is accurate and complete. Accumulating all the questions you had from outlining the subject and getting them answered. You'll have questions when you read a case. You'll also have questions after outlining a section and a topic on like, is this right? Or is my understanding here correct? Etc. You also want to have organization templates prepared for how you would discuss that topic on the essay. And then 4, being comfortable with the common scenarios in which that topic is tested. So you need to see and get some comfort. Oh, this is how they test this concept, etc. Come some practice questions. Now, again, I hope that's all sinking in. Everybody's going to read and brief, guys. Everybody's going to put together an outline. The place and the way that you separate yourselves is in that phase. Mastering the topics as you go. Awesome. Okay. Any questions on that section before we move on? Perfect. All right, so we're going to fly through the rest of these for this document so we can go ahead and move on with our session. And so here we go. So now at this point, we're kind of like, some lighter things and some more concepts to make sure you're keeping in the back of the mind as you go through your law school journey. And this is also, again, for the 2Ls, right? Good for as you get into the bar exam and you're dealing with your topics as well. 3Ls, same thing. Number 1, which is step 6 here, learn, do not memorize. Learn, do not memorize. So at the end of the day, so many of us get so caught up with I gotta memorize everything that we end up not understanding it and not learning it. So if I'm the first one to tell you, make sure you're soaking that in. And if somebody else has told you already, you're hearing it again. So it must be important, right? And yeah. Last thing I'll share on that is that when I was a 1L, I remember I came in with all this pressure to the extent that I wanted to be top of my class. I wanted to be number 1. I wanted to get a scholarship to pay. And I could feel the anxiety building up literally in week 1 as I'm like, I got to do it. I got to crush it, right? And then I heard somebody tell me something just like this, and it took off all the pressure. And it was like, look, if I just kind of focus on learning this law, learning the information, this is my career path now, right? Everything will fall into order. And it did just that. So just remember, you're here to learn the law. Have fun with it. Next, pay attention in class. Self-explanatory. Get off the Facebook, get off the social media, get off all of the distractions. Don't be shopping in class. You only have class for a limited time. So much of what ends up on your final exams are concepts and things talked about in class, right? Put that education to good use, put that money to good use that you paid to be there, and pay attention in class, okay? Participation bump up. Some professors do a bump up in your class. If you have a B+, you'll get now an A- based off of your participation throughout the semester. And so look to see if your professor does that, and if so, 100% take advantage of it. But DeAndre, I don't like participating in class. It's not really in my style. Well, hey, you're in the legal field now, and before you graduate, you're oftentimes going to be put in the hot seat, have to volunteer or have to participate. And chances are you might be a litigator and you're going to be in front of a judge, in front of other people. So now is the time to get out of that shell and start putting yourself out there, okay? And have fun with it. Give yourself grace and, comfort with you getting better with that skill, but definitely keep that in mind and start pushing yourself towards that. Next, study groups. I was waiting for this part because Remy, you were so excited in the beginning. You were saying that you found your study group and you've made some friends already, which is 100% great and awesome. But I am very cautious about study groups. And let me just share why, because they're not that you can't ever do them, right? But here's the thing. I started law school. I was in study groups. And what happened in most of the study groups that I was in, it was the blind leading the blind, right? Everybody is trying to be the teacher in the situation and we're trying to figure things out together, but nobody understands it. And it actually drags it out a little bit longer. What's another situation here with the study groups is that it's just like the distractions. People start talking. We start talking about how crazy law school is. And so it could be a good venting session, but next thing you know, it's 2 hours later and you didn't get all your work done. So at the end of the day, Remy and everybody else, if you're in a very good study group with very focused individuals and you guys have discipline and you get work done together, by all means, that's amazing. Outside of that, I look more so for accountability partners where it's like, hey, let's show up to the library at the same time, but we're in separate cubicles and separate areas, and we can maybe meet up during our breaks and meet up during lunch or things like that, just to avoid a lot of the distractions that come with study groups. Okay? So that's my 2 cents on that. Next, stay in your lane. Don't get consumed by what everybody else is doing on their path to success. It's important to determine your own strengths and your own weaknesses and determine your plan and how hard you have to work to obtain your goals, right? So everything about that message is like, it's about you. And it's so easy to have FOMO in law school. It's so easy to look over and be like, as you're packing up and leaving out of the library, like, oh my God, somebody is over there still grinding it out. And you can't do that. You gotta have your plan, research your plan, vet your plan, and stick to it, and feel confident and comfortable in that. Again, a little bit from my personal experience. Again, I was a straight A student. I was never the last person in the library. In my history of both being in law school, and working with law students, it's typically not the person who is the last person in the library who is top of their class, right? Because it shouldn't take that long. You shouldn't be burning yourself out in that way. You need to use your time efficiently and effectively. So just keep that in mind. It's all about staying in your lane. Some people work slower, some people work faster, but don't get that anxiety and FOMO when somebody is doing it differently. Other outlines, right? So this is always a popular topic, especially with 1Ls. Let's go with Remy. Remy, have you received any other outlines from upperclassmen or from online banks or things like that yet?
No, I haven't, but I did sign up for Quimby and they have outlines. So I kind of looked at them for a second, but didn't really use them to create my own or anything.
Okay, yeah. And it's still super early, but it's awesome. You're already kind of getting the lay of the land and you know what's out there. And so, right, here's my 2 cents on using others' outlines. Should you do it? The answer to that is yes and no. What's the bad way to use other outlines, whether they're from a place like Quimby or from upperclassmen at your school, is that students will then get lazy and not do the outlining themselves. It's so important that you do the outlining yourself. That's where the magic is, right? When you make your cheat sheet, when you make your consolidated form, it's almost the process of making it was more valuable than what the final product is itself. So you have to make your own outline. Now, with that said, other outlines, right? We're going to have our outlines and we're going to share them with you guys as well for those that go with our services. The idea of how you properly use other outlines is to not reinvent the wheel, is to make sure you're not trying to start from scratch, right? So this kind of goes back to Clyde, what we talked about using the canned brief before you start reading the case. Same thing. Feel free to look at another outline to kind of see, all right, what is a style here? And then from there, you may need to optimize it or adjust it for your class. And then that's where the hard work can come in on how should I twist this into my own and put it into my own words and things like that. But so, yeah, the message there is feel free to use other outlines, but for its limited value. Do not overly, rely on them to where you're not doing your work. Okay. Step number 12, last step of this document, and it's play the game. Right? So here are the quick little notes on playing the game for this this document here. Eliminate any emotional investment in the outcome. So you guys can read this in more detail, but here's the takeaway. There are so many juicy fact patterns. There are so many heart-throbbing fact patterns that so many times a student will analyze with their emotion, not based off of the law. Let me prepare you guys all now for the desensitization that you will have to things like people getting killed in your fact patterns. You're going to have to deal with rape cases. You're going to have to deal with torts and car accidents in every single case. And you can't put yourself in the shoes of the victim and, oh my God, I need to now find an outcome for that victim. Your objective in law school is to be objective. You have to see both sides. If you're dealing with a rape case and there are arguments to be made on both sides and ultimately the defendant should go free, even though that person might have been a scumbag and an evil person, based off of the law, the elements were not completely met to send him away to jail. So you have to find that outcome, even though that's not what you like, that's not what you wanted. So important to make sure you keep your emotions in check and become a little bit robotic, honestly. Like you have to take your emotions out of it and what's the law? What's the arguments on both sides? What's then the likely conclusion? Okay. Next is learn the game. As much as you think law school is about being creative and coming up with outstanding novel ideas and arguments, it's not. Maybe 10% of what you'll do in law school will be creative. Law school is about recognizing patterns, knowing what areas of law are triggered by certain types of fact patterns, having clear structure for articulating your arguments, and having your default arguments ready to go. Understanding and practicing this is a skill in and of itself. Law school is going to change the way that you think. Write and analyze. The students that accept this and learn it are the ones who perform well. The ones who rely on the skills that help them perform well in undergrad will struggle. Undergrad, law school, two completely different worlds. Get in here ready to learn the game, learn the lingo, learn the walk and talk, right? And just kind of come in, again, be a sponge in that way. Last two. Law school is not the place to fight the law and change the system. So this is for that person who's been wanting to go to law school for 5 years now, 10 years now, 15 years now, because they want to change the law. They want to get in here and be an advocate, right, for underserved groups and this and that. Do understand that that is what you do when you are practicing. In law school, you have to play the game and give the professors what they want. You want to know what the common arguments are and regurgitate that. You do not want to go against the system. You want to go with the system, okay? So for all of those that have that type of mentality to like battle things and push things and push the envelope, that's great, but keep that for practice. For law school, you want to know what is it that they're looking for, and let me give you what you want to hear. And then last, more on professor pleasing. Do note that every professor is different and unique. Learn their particular style. Is the professor liberal or conservative? Does the professor like their essays written in a particular format? Does the professor prefer verbatim rules or is okay with personalized versions of the rule? Does the professor have opinions or preferences on gray areas of the law? So all questions to consider. But here's my thing. I'm not saying you need to be a professor, kiss ass or suck up and teacher's pet, but you need to be smart here. This professor is grading your essay. I am going to write something that I feel like is going to be a pleasant experience for them. If my professor likes, controversial arguments and ideas and thoughts and things like that, well, that's what I'm going to give him. If my professor really likes his own thoughts and he's very conservative in his approach to this class, well, I'm going to try to tailor my perspective to that as well. So again, professor pleasing, and just at the end of the day, I need the A. He's the person or she's the person grading my essay, so let me make sure I write something that increases my chances of receiving that grade. All right, that is it for this document. The rest that you have there is just a template to fill in your weekly schedule with when you'll be doing your readings, before each class. You have your homework to-do list, and you have a diagram of how we notes and outline. Before we move on from the fundamentals, do we have any questions? So we're now in the how to get an A section. All right, so Clyde, are you with me there? You got the diagram up. Do you see that pie chart for all the things that goes into how to get the A?
Yeah.
Awesome. Please tell me, what are the different components? This is the recipe for how to actually get the A. What are the components of doing so?
So the first 20% is outlining, then there's 20% for office hours, 20% for practice essays, 20% for confidence, 10% for reading and briefing, and 10% for practice multiple choice.
Awesome. So again, not only did we give you what are all the things that goes into success, but also what is the right dosage of each one. Out of looking at that list, Clyde, is there anything that may be a shocker there? Something that you thought would have been less of a percentage or more of a percentage?
Honestly, for me, like the office hours, 20% for office hours.
Yeah, a lot of times people do not go to office hours. Exactly, that could definitely be a shocker. I think another typical shocker is the reading and briefing at 10%, where it's like we spend 70% of our time in the semester, 60% of our time in the semester doing reading and briefing, but it only translates to 10% of the recipe for success. So again, something good to go into, right, your semester with this in mind, knowing where you should focus your time. So let's break down just a few of these. And again, you guys have this PDF, and some of this is designed for you to sit with at your own time and process on your own. I want to first talk about outlining real quick. We talked about this already. Start outlining now. As soon as you learn a topic, you can outline it. Don't take shortcuts. All right. And then make sure you're organizing your material in a way at some point that translates to how you will be writing it out on the exam. So that's always a good indicator. Once you get to doing practice questions, if you're stuck on a practice question or practice essay on how you're going to write this out, that means your outline is not good enough. Your outline ultimately, and your outline can go through phases itself, but your outline ultimately needs to be like, yo, this gives me all my rules. It also gives me the flow of how I'm going to discuss this particular type of issue on my essay. Okay. Next, office hours. Go to them and go to them early. At the end of the day, there's a lot of pluses in office hours, right? And you can get a lot of value from them. There's a list here of all the little perks and benefits that you can get from them, okay? So you can read through that on your own. What I do want to say is that signing up for Legally Fit will drastically reduce the amount of office hours that you need, but it will not completely replace it. At the end of the day, one of the things that you're going to office hours for in a large scheme is to make sure you're on the right track. Now, again, we are professionals in our space to make sure you're on the right track. But at the end of the day, I'm going to advise you now we need to take this to office hours to make sure, it's consistent with what they want on their final exam or whatever it may be. So that's where you get your final sense of confirmation and validation that you're doing what you need to for that professor. Do get ready for this. All professors in law school are different, right? This is why me, the Elijahs, the Matts, the Natalies, we probably have our favorite professors from law school and our not so favorite ones. One of the things that they differ in is how much they will assist a student. All right, so look at this last little note under office hours. Unfortunately, the typical law school professor tries to hide the ball. Each professor has a different commitment level to helping students outside of class. Some will let you turn in as many essays as you write, others won't review any. Some will literally read through your entire outline, others won't take a look at your outline. It's your job to understand each professor and get as much out of them as you can, right? So if they're there to be with you and hold your hand, well, go there and get more out of them. But sometimes you deal with a professor that's like, hey, you got to figure it out on your own. So it varies. Next, practice essays. So again, this is very early on, so I just want to drop a few seeds for things like this. Remy, when do you think you would want to start doing your first practice essay? What do you think?
Maybe immediately after you learn the topic.
That is a very rare but very on point answer. I wouldn't say necessarily right after learning the topic, because you might want to, we're going to go with that. Like right after learning a topic. And a lot of times, here are the fears that people have that keep them from doing practice exams. One, they feel like I need to be able to know all of the topics on a particular essay in order to be able to do it. And then the other one is just like, I want to like save this to the end of the semester. I don't want to do practice exams right now. I want to save it to the end. And all of those are not the way to go. So first off, do realize that you can do a practice exam and only do a portion of it. You can read through the entire thing, and if you've only learned one of the 3 topics focused on in that essay, you can just focus on the facts and the analysis for that particular essay. All right? And then, don't feel like you need to like be a genius and master an essay before you start doing them, okay? So many students fall into this pitfall. So many students are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a practice exam next week and then next week. And then you go to the final exam not having done any practice exams or just 1 or 2, and that's not what you want to do. Okay? Can't stress practice exams enough. If anything, I actually would even consider, if I was going to change this pie chart, I might even make practice essays 25% or 30%. It's definitely one of the most important things. Because from that, you also, again, get to see if you have any holes in your outlining. So you really use practice essays, guys. Think of this, and this will help too, is some seed planting. Practice essays are not used to test yourself. They're used to learn from. And that's the reason why a lot of us avoid doing them, because we feel like we're testing ourselves with them, and then we feel like we're not ready to test ourselves. So when you think of practice essays as, oh, this is just another learning tool, well, then you go into it with the right mindset, and then you can soak up lessons from it. So then that way, by the time of the final exam, you're as ready as you can be. Okay? Next, reading and briefing. So again, we kind of like put the nail in the coffin on this discussion. We had a lot of great questions on it already. And just the reminder here is that, look, this is not what is the biggest translator to getting an A in your class. Understand that you have to do the reading and briefing, but knowing all your cases and your case names and everything that happened inside of them is not what's going to translate to getting the A. You need to have templates ready for how to discuss these issues, which are going to be in your outline. You need to have a clear and clean outline. You need to have some experience doing practice questions so you can issue spot quickly, confidently, efficiently. Right? So many other things have a more important role in your success. So just keep in mind. And that's why, guys, even though we could always spend more time reading and briefing, that's why we want to try to limit it to an hour per class once we can get to that point. And last thing I want to touch on in that, for some of us, I think it was Remy again, that was referring to, going to class and being a little on edge because, maybe she didn't prepare as much as she'd like. So if I only, prepare for like an hour, maybe 2, I'm likely going to have questions and not have mastered this topic when I go to class. Do realize that you should not be putting that pressure on yourself to like master that topic that you just read for the first time, right, in law school. Like give yourself some grace and understanding that you're learning a new topic. And so when you get to class, it's like, hey, I did do the reading. This is what I was able to get and comprehend from this case, but I am kind of like, a little short on my understanding here or there, and have that confidently. Don't feel like you have to master everything as you walk into class, okay? It's going to put too much pressure on yourself. At the end of the day, whether you receive scholarship or you're paying out of pocket, you're paying to be there to be taught, right? So when you get to class, don't forget that you're here to receive lessons, to receive instruction from your professors. And now, there's always two sides of this coin. Do not do zero reading and zero preparation and just show up and like, yeah, I pay you, so I need you to teach me, right? You need to do your part, but don't overdo it and obsess over like perfection as you go into class. Then there's a section here on practice multiple choice. Do them. Practice multiple choice are typically harder to find because you want to do practice multiple choice for your professor, but your professor typically doesn't do it because usually they have their questions that they use for their exam and they don't make new ones. They just want to keep using the same ones. So a lot of times you have to use things from supplements. We offer supplements to practice for multiple choice, which are really great. There's also other things out there. You can figure out throughout the semester what you want to use, but try to find some source of multiple choice question practice. And then lastly, this is one that very few will focus on, and that's putting into your success is confidence. All right? Confidence is like not to be confused with arrogance, conceit, stubborn pride, and like, oh yeah, I'm just going to kill this. Confidence, what I'm referring to is a student who does their work and shows up ready to discuss what they need to discuss. The way this translates to a good grade is that you can tell a confident student versus a non-confident student in the way that they write. A confident student is identifying the issue, is confidently arguing both sides and then saying, I think this is going to be the likely conclusion. A non-confident student is like unsure of themselves as they're going through it, unsure of the arguments that they're making on behalf of the parties, and all of that translates to a final product that's nowhere near as good as the confident student. I've even seen confident students who do not understand the law well at all still manage to get B's in law school, right? Because it's just like, I'm going to, come up with what I got and I'm going to sell it, and that still gets points somehow. But it's all the mindset of like, you got to buy into it. And so with that section, I'm going to leave you with a quote that actually came from my undergrad business law professor. And it's, if you're going to sin, sin boldly, right? And in this case, obviously, we're not talking about actual sins, but the whole metaphor here is that, once you come up with what your answer is going to be or what your argument is going to be, go 110% with it. Don't, pity-patty and 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Sell that argument and, and do it strong. Okay, so confidence. We got to build our confidence, guys. And you guys want to be that, And this is also going to be something that, we have this very important topic of imposter syndrome and do we belong here? First off, everybody belongs in law school. Everybody can succeed in law school. And so I want everybody to, early on build their confidence with being here and, articulating themselves. And that's what you have to practice. And the practice comes with doing your work. That's the first step in getting your confidence. All right, so that is how to get the A.